I'm Tarun. I'm co-founder at Missing. At Missing, what we do is we build a lot of tech and data infra, which generally helps in the social ecosystem, helping agencies, brands drive the growth, right? So we build integrations to all the social media platforms and help brands and agencies to take it further from there when they want to monitor influencer growth and so on and so forth. So that's about me. Prior to this, I've been part of a lot of e-commerce related systems, right? So I was part of product team at Flipkart, part of product team at Tokopedia, part of product team at AirAsia. Flipkart and Tokopedia are like, say, Amazon of India and Amazon of Indonesia. So
Got
have been part of bunch of product teams around Southeast Asia, and that's where Mizink is based out of as well, right? That's our expertise. We run bunch of things around Southeast Asia, so Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, okay. Well, my name is Tom Augenthaler, and I'm the founder and the principal consultant of 551 Media, which is a consultancy that caters to B2B SaaS companies. And what we help them with is B2B influencer marketing. So that's quite a bit different than the consumer side of things, where most people equate influencer marketing with Instagram and TikTok and social media platforms like that. On the B2B side, it's a lot different. It's more about building long form content together in the form of, it could be getting your spokespeople on the podcast, blog posts, articles. It could be LinkedIn Live video interviews. It could be YouTube videos. Could be any number of things along those lines. But it's, like I said, it's typically longer form content. And it's about building brand awareness, brand affinity, ultimately demand gen, because ideally people will find this content and then find your company as a result of that.
Right.
But it could also be used for lead generation and some things like that. It's just that those things require some more specific tactics. But it's totally doable. So our company caters to growth stage companies, rather than enterprises. It's kind of weird because I came out of the enterprise environment, but just having done that, I can tell you that it's hard to get things done with an enterprise, and it's hard to make an impact that's really meaningful in a short-term time frame, and it's also hard getting paid.
Right. B2B SaaS moves faster than enterprise.
Yeah, very fast-moving companies, nimble, usually smaller teams of people, so it's a lot easier to get things done.
Absolutely. I think it seems like you have been parts of multiple sides of this table as well, right? You were part of enterprise, and then now you are consulting B2B SaaS companies as well. I think I'll ask the first question here, right? What really got you started into influencer marketing in that case?
It was really an accident, to tell you the truth. And if we have to go back in time a little bit, back to like 2008, and I was still at HP, which is where I was employed at the time. And at that point in time, HP was a giant conglomerate. It was not split into two different companies. So it was a giant company. And I worked in a specific division called the Personal Systems Group. And inside there, I was part of the PR team, the worldwide PR team. And we, handled all the products for the company around the world. And my specific product that I was responsible for was the consumer laptops. So when the economy was going down and banks were failing back in 2008, it was a
2008.
really
Yeah.
bad scenario. Yeah, a little scary there. Um, we had to still get the word out about the products, because a lot of the media companies that we were doing business with, and magazines and things like that, were folding up and going out of business. So we still had to figure out a way to do this, get the word out to the consumers. So we started working with tech bloggers, and that's how it started. So I noticed a couple of things about the tech bloggers that were different about usual media outlets. And the first was that they were really enthusiastic, and they would really work with the product and dig into it and really figure out what was the best environment for it to work in, and all those good things. And that was
Right.
really interesting. They produced really interesting content. Some of it was really long, really multi-page blog posts. I mean, it was really good stuff.
Right.
And I started to figure out, wow, this content is almost better than some of the media content that we're getting. So I think we should double down on the influencers. So that's what we did.
Yeah, I think those are the first generation of influencers, right? First generation of key opinion leaders who are operating their own blogs and just driving audiences towards a relevant action.
That's interesting. You just used the term key opinion leader,
Yeah.
which is a term that gets used in Southeast Asia a lot more than it does in the United States or North America. But I like the term a lot because I think that it is a little more exact than the word influencer, right? Because
Yeah.
influencer can mean just about anything,
Right.
which is part of the problem, I think, over here in North America. It's just like you say the word influencer and everybody's head goes to, everybody's brain goes immediately to like Instagram and TikTok. And I'm like trying to explain, no, that's not, that's not who
Mr.
I'm
Beast.
working with. But no, so I really appreciate that terminology, and I try to use it as much as possible over here because I'm a proponent of it.
God. Happy to use it. I think here KOL as a term is a lot more popular as well. So that's true. Um, I think I think we touched at the right point, right? So you started in 2008, and that is when influencer marketing was in, say, V1, version one. We are starting to evolve from there. So how have you seen the role of an influencer marketer evolve over all this time, right? How that has shaped over?
Wow, it's changed so much. I mean, it's almost hard to describe. In the very beginning, it was pretty simple. It was still very time consuming in that you had to find the bloggers yourself, and then you had to reach out to them and see if they would be willing to work with you. And then you'd have to work up some kind of an arrangement that would work for both of you. So it was a bit time consuming. It was harder to find the influencers, a lot
Right.
harder. I don't know if you remember this, but back in those days, on a lot of blogs, they had what was called a blog roll on the side. It was like a
Right.
sidebar. And that's where the blogger would put up links to different blogs that they liked and followed. And boy, that was probably the best thing going in those days, because you'd go through every blog roll and you'd see, well, who else were they linking to? And that was the best way to find people, because Google really wasn't that good then. It was okay, it wasn't great. Um,
And that was
so
version one of the personalized recommendations by the blogger themselves.
yeah. So what's changed is really the technology has enabled it, the whole thing, to become a lot easier. So it's a lot easier to find influencers. It's a lot easier to get in touch with them. It's a lot easier to create campaigns and programs and to structure deals with them. How you're going to pay them and all that stuff is a lot easier. So a lot of those things have really been simplified, which is great.
Right.
The thing I don't like about it is that on the consumer side, it's become nothing really more than influencer advertising. So it's really just,
Right.
you know, find 100 influencers and give them your stuff and tell them what to say. And they put it up on their Instagram feeds for 24, 48 hours, whatever it is. And, you've got a little campaign going.
Right.
The whole point of influencer marketing to me was was leveraging the voice of the influencer to talk about your product, not you telling them what to say.
Right, absolutely.
So,
You get that personalized attention in that content piece, right? Whereas
yeah,
now it has become a templatized, standardized version of a lot of things.
yeah, it's become templatized. That's a good way to put it. I agree with
Yeah.
you. That's what it's become. Now on the B2B side of things, that's not true so much.
Hmm.
So no B2B influencer I know would ever just take what I tell them to say, or any company tells them to say, and just say it. They would never do that, because their credibility would be shot pretty quickly, and then they wouldn't be able to do what they do anymore. So that doesn't happen on the B2B side of things that I ever see, at least.
Got it. But it has still become much, much easier to even search for B2B influencers because of B2B creators, because just that the
Oh
market
yeah.
has increased.
Oh yeah, it's much better now. I mean, there are some platforms that influencer platforms that cater to the B2B influencer business.
Discovery.
So, yeah, there's like one of them is Analytica. That one does. There's an online B2B thought leaders community called Thinkers 360, which is another one good to check out. And then Google's a lot better too. And you can even use Chat GPT to find
Yeah.
influencers. So
Absolutely. Back to 2023's newest innovation, right? With regard to solving for discovery. I think
yeah,
through these
exactly.
15 years, right? I'm sure you have done multiple successful influencer marketing campaigns. Any one which comes to your mind as a memorable one? Maybe you can tell us what made it special or successful.
Well, my favorite ones are always the ones that I'm involved with now. So those are, but more typically than not, most of the campaigns I build for clients now and manage the relationships for are mainly around brand awareness, building brand affinity, and then ultimately the demand gen, like I talked about earlier. Um, but I'd have to say that some of those early campaigns that we did back in 2010, 2011, 2012 were some of the most exciting because it was so new and it was so different that the impact we made was pretty immense. One of them was with HP. We recruited like 31 influencers to run a sequence of contests over the course of 31 days. Each blogger did a contest over 31 days. And that ginned up a lot of buzz and goodwill and drove actually a lot of sales of a laptop product for HP. So that was really pretty exciting because the company showed me some of the statistics on the fact that the sales were increasing for the unit because of the campaign that we were running.
Wow.
Um, they would not give me specific sales numbers. They didn't do that for anybody inside the company. That's for legal reasons, but that was very exciting. The other thing that really comes to mind is we were running, this was after I had left HP and I was with a consultancy, and we had I created a campaign or a program rather for HP Enterprise, because HP Enterprise, that division, hired us to build a program for them. We did it, and during one of those influencer events, one of the influencers tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if there was a salesperson there in the meeting that we could talk to, or that he could talk to. And I asked him why, and he said, well, one of his readers was on, questioning him about how to go about buying the particular HP product, which was getting talked about.
Right.
And the, the interesting thing was is that this particular follower of this influencer was going to buy a competing product until he saw the influencer's content as a result of the being present at our event, and
Wow.
changed his mind. So he wanted to talk to a salesperson, and we hooked him up with a salesperson, and we ended up selling several $100,000 worth of hardware as a result of that. So the event might have cost $15,000, and back then, and then we ended up selling several $100,000 worth of equipment.
Absolutely.
So that was pretty exciting. I have to say, whenever you see sales resulting as a result of an influencer campaign or program, I get very excited by that because it's like direct ROI on the bottom line.
Absolutely. And this also illustrates another thing, right? Like when you are doing a campaign, you are still doing it from for the brand purposes, right? Brand awareness and so on and so forth, right? But unexpectedly, it resulted in a conversion in front of us, right? And
Yeah,
that sort of brought in the whole angle that, oh, actually it does convert, right? Even if we are not able to track it, say beyond this event also, but we know it converts just basis involvement of someone who is doing a personalized recommendation or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's really the power of it. It's the fact that other people that you like and trust are talking about something, and this influences me all the time. I mean, I'll see people that I like and trust talk about, a different product or a book or whatever it happens to be, and I'll immediately buy it based just on what they've said.
Right.
Uh, so, in the B2B side of things, it doesn't quite happen that fast normally,
Hmm.
but it can. But if that buyer is already to the point where they're really ready to buy something, and you happen to get that content in front of them right around that time, the bottom of the funnel, so to speak, right? It could be perfect, and that's just what happened then. And that was, I think, we were pretty lucky about that
Right, right,
on the
absolutely.
timing, you know.
I think another correlated question here which comes right, and which you raised a couple of times, right? Like B2C influencer marketing is probably much different from how B2B marketing works, really, right? So as a B2B influencer marketer, right, what are the top three KPIs which come to your mind, which are probably the most important when you are driving an influencer marketing campaign?
Yeah, the first is I've got to really have a very clear idea about what the objective of the campaign is. So it's got to be really, really clear. What are we trying to do here?
Hmm.
A lot of B2B SaaS companies are having a very difficult time sort of breaking through the noise, so to speak, that's out there, because there's so much content every day. We're all bombarded with it. Well, how do you sort of cut through that and and do an end run around it so that you can get in front of your target buyers? But you got to know what the objective is, right? The second thing is that you've got to select the influencers that speak to your target buyers.
Right,
You've got to get enough of them into the campaign to make an impact.
right,
Now, occasionally, like I said, it can be one guy that you know drives a sale that makes you several hundred grand, but that's not the norm, right? So the norm is you've got to put out a consistent amount of content with the right influencers to make that kind of an impact over time. It's going to trickle in. The other one is the relationships. B2B influencer marketing to me is very heavily laden on relationships. So, and what I mean by that is that you've got to reach out to the influencers. You've got to get to know them a little bit. That means knowing their content, where they like to post their content, publish it, what their voice is, so to speak. What is their angle? What do they like to do? What other topics or issues are they really attracted to and like to talk about? The more you can understand all of that, the easier it is to build a relationship with the person. So you've got to reach out, and then you've got to stay in touch. It's not just about what can I get out of you today. It's more like building a friendship, and getting to know them, and that way more opportunities will come about later on too, because the influencer might
absolutely.
come back. They might come back to you and say, "Hey, I heard this," or I've heard that such and such company is looking to buy some equipment, some new stuff. You might want to reach out to them, or they might tell you what they're hearing in the marketplace. Like right now, a couple of the influencers I've been talking to lately have told me that webinars are not converting as well as they used to, because I think people are just sort of burnt out on webinars. Because of the pandemic and being inside all the time, and then we were stuck being online. And people now want to get back out to going to physical events when they can, because they really want to be with people in person. And the webinars therefore are not converting as well as they were before. But I'm hearing that directly from influencers who are participating in these webinars. So that's the kind of information you can get that you're not necessarily hearing out there otherwise. So they
Got it.
can really be great channels of information to you, to give you a competitive edge when you think about it.
Your ear to the ground.
Yeah, if you just use it right. Yeah.
And this brings me to that. I think it's challenging to run an influencer marketing campaign, right? So, what's the toughest part about managing influencer marketing campaigns at scale?
At scale is probably keeping it all together in terms of logistics. So it's a matter of, you can run a pretty big campaign off a spreadsheet. You can, and I do it all the time. But it gets more and more challenging, and that's where a lot of these online platforms really can help you out, because they can help manage all of that and track the content for you, once you plug in all the necessary data. So that's, to me, one of the biggest challenges if you're going to run it at scale. The other is just sort of keeping up with the influencers themselves, because nothing's really going to, you can't really automate a friendship. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the relationship aspect is still pretty, it's still you know, that relies on you to initiate and to reach out on a periodic basis.
Right.
And maybe you just reach out to say, hey, how are you doing? You know, and if you get to know them a little bit and you know they're going through something, reach out and just say, hey, how are you doing? And, you know, is there anything I can do to help? Because they're all human beings at the end. And I think we need to keep that in mind. You know, we're not advertising bots.
Absolutely. And I think through this also, like you cultivate these relationships in a way that you are also able to have not just one campaign, so as to say, right? It's a lifelong relationship, right? Maybe there are opportunities that open up from the other side as well, right? So I think that's the other part of it, because ultimately these guys are operating in the same space as you.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that you keep those channels of communication open, because that's what's going to lead to more business for you. It's going to help you with finding other influencers, because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to an influencer or a few influencers and I ask them, do you know anybody that else in this niche, this space, that be a good fit for this campaign I'm putting together? And a lot of times they will come back to you with some names that you didn't even know. So yeah, so that's worked out really well. And then, you know, sometimes you get referrals, client referrals come in through that way too.
Absolutely. That's true. And that corresponds to even higher sales, right? In some way.
Exactly.
So we talked about the whole sort of life cycle of an influencer marketing campaign, right? We talked about that we are finding influencers, that has become easier, but then we are finding them still, right? Then there is the management of campaigns, then there is communication and maintaining those relationships through these multiple funnels, right? What are the go-to software tools for you for really managing it, right? For, I think you mentioned somewhere we are able to find, right? Maybe we can just talk about your software stack. How does that look like?
My software stack is, it's not too complicated. It's pretty basic. So I use Google Sheets. I use Google Documents. I will use a tool called Hype Auditor when I'm checking on influencers on their social media, you know, to check how verify their social media followings. Because I like to make sure that the influencers I'm working with have a real audience there. Another one, I'll occasionally use Analytica as a platform to go and find influencers to sort of check out. They have some interesting things inside of their platform that can help me figure out the network of influencers that they're connected to. And that, of course, translates into, well, who's the buying audience and who are they listening to? So you can kind of get a better feel for whether that influencer really maps into that well. I'd say another one is ChatGPT lately, honestly, to tell you the truth. And I will use ChatGPT to help me find influencers in niches that are difficult to search for them in. That's helped a lot, although you still have to do some legwork on your own to vet them, to see whether they're, as you know, if they're the right fit. But you know, ChatGPT is getting better over time, so that's good. And then Google, you know, Google search, I'll still use that quite a bit. And then there's another tool I use for Twitter to check on Twitter followings. But all it does is check on Twitter followings. It's called Twitter Audit, I think.
Okay, Twitter Audit. Do you use anything to manage your campaigns or just Google Sheets?
Google Sheets, to tell you the truth, because honestly, I can get away with that because we're not working with lots of influencers. So
Got it.
any campaign that I have is probably, you know, 2 or 3 influencers at any given time. So it's not,
Unmanageable.
it's manageable, right? I don't need, if I was working with 15, 20, 25, 30 influencers, I'd probably have to use one of those
Right.
online platforms, which would help.
Absolutely. And when you are running these campaigns, right? Like, how do you measure success, right, for your clients?
Okay, so you have to put the success measures in place up front when you determine the objective. So what are we looking for here? A lot of times it's about the content itself. It's not
Right.
so much about how many inquiries are coming in yet or anything like that. It's more about, okay, the company content really isn't that great, or it's kind of lackluster and boring. So we need to put out content that's a lot more informational, educational, and actually a little bit more entertaining. And that's where the influencers come in. So it's the quality of the content. A lot of it's qualitative. There is quantitative in terms of like how much content are we getting produced. But then also, I have a measure where I work with the company or the client to figure out how they can socialize that content
Got it.
through their own social media channels, and then internally as well. They need to be able to shop that content internally so that the internal stakeholders understand, what's happening as well.
Very insightful in that regard. I think moving on to the last question, right, for our session. I think we are running out of time. Hope that's okay. Slightly.
No, that's fine. I've got to stop soon anyway.
Okay. So I think we talked about how influencer marketing has matured over time. We talked about how tools have really matured, how technology has really matured, right? I think going forward, what do you see influencer marketing further evolving as, right? What are the opportunities you see? What can get better in influencer marketing? What would be something you look forward to? And what are your predictions around that?
Artificial intelligence is going to get more and more important. And I think that that's going to be from a couple of avenues. One, content production. So you're going to see more and more of the influencers actually use ChatGPT and other type tools to create content. That's just going to happen. And the good ones will use it, and they won't just use it and then slap it up there. They will go in and edit it heavily to make it theirs, right? And
Right.
insert their insights into it, which ChatGPT can't do yet, or none of
Right.
those tools yet. Um, and the other thing is, I think you're going to see some. It's already starting with a term called synthetic work, um, and that is that you're going to see artificial influencers be created, and it could be in cloud computing, it could be in it could data analysis, it could be anything. And what's going to happen is that these companies are going to train these artificial influencers to learn and know this information, and then they're going to have them pump out information over time. So you're going to see on the B2B side, you're going to see people start to follow artificial intelligence generated influencers. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. It's already happening on the consumer side.
Right.
There's already artificial intelligence generated influencers that have hundreds of thousands of followers. So
Absolutely.
you're going to see it on the B2B side as well. You're also going to see, I think, new business models start to get developed a little bit, I think, as a result of AI, because it just can help you jumpstart something like that. And you're going to see that as well.
Got it. So I think a lot of things which are related to AI, both in written form as well as their presence as a whole, right? So the video form as well in some ways, and that providing with recommendations or that turning into an AI key opinion leader, so as to say. So I think that's a bet which might happen surely. Um, do you see any particular threat to influencer marketing, or you see it as a completely growing industry moving, say, 5 years down the line?
I think that you're going to see the trajectory continue to grow where it is now, and it's going to continue to grow up, even in spite of the economy. Because the economy here in the United States is shaky. So there's already budgets being pulled back. People are reining in, getting laid off. Things like that are happening. But you're going to see the investment continue because with the artificial intelligence component mixed into it, you're going to be able to scale the work that the people that are doing the work are going to be able to scale it better. So
Absolutely.
I can't even imagine, I think, some of the tools that are going to get developed. There are already tools out there that I never would have imagined just a couple of years ago. So I think in the next few years, we're going to see new tools come out that are going to blow your mind.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's a good thing in that it's going to help people like you and me and others that are listening to this podcast scale and work smarter. So I wouldn't be afraid of it. I'd embrace it, and I'd say, "Whoa, wow! How can I learn to use these tools so that I can just exponentially increase my output and make my output even better?" Right.
Absolutely.
So that's what I think is going to happen.